For 4,000 years, these walls were sealed shut, not because of gold, not because of curses, but because of words. Words a pharaoh was never supposed to let anyone else read. In 1881, a French archaeologist broke through a wall inside a small, crumbling pyramid south of Cairo, expecting an empty room, like every pyramid before it, silent stone, no writing at all.
Instead, he found the walls covered floor to ceiling in hieroglyphs, thousands of them, spells, instructions, warnings, the oldest religious texts ever discovered on Earth, hidden inside a tomb that was never meant to be opened.
This is the Pyramid of Unas, the last king of Egypt's 5th dynasty, who died around 2345 BC, and by the time he was buried, Egyptians had already been building pyramids for over a century. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built generations earlier, is completely silent inside, not one word carved anywhere on its walls, and every royal tomb before this one followed that same unbroken rule. Unas broke that rule completely, and to this day, historians don't fully agree on why, though some point to a kingdom that was starting to fracture, central power weakening just enough to unsettle a king. Egyptologists now call these inscriptions the pyramid texts, over 200 distinct spells carved directly into the walls of the burial chamber, likely composed by priests at Heliopolis, the center of Egyptian religious scholarship. They describe something very specific, the king's journey after death, how to rise from the tomb, how to cross the sky, how to become a star and take a seat among the gods. One spell reads, translated, "The sky is clear. I see beyond it," and another commands the sky itself to lower a ladder so the king can climb up to join the stars. These weren't decorations. They weren't poetry for visitors to admire. They were instructions, a user's manual for the afterlife, written for one reader only, a king who would never speak again.
But here's the part that still unsettles historians today. These texts weren't written for us to read. They were written for the king alone, sealed in a chamber no living person was ever supposed to enter again.
In ancient Egyptian belief, words carried real power. Writing something down wasn't just recording it, it was making it happen. And to write, "The king becomes a star" inside a sealed, lightless tomb was believed to actually cause it to occur. Which means these texts weren't a message left for future generations. They were a spell being cast in real time, meant to work in total darkness for eternity, unread by anyone at all. We only know these texts exist because a wall broke, because a seal failed, because 43 centuries later, someone found a crack. And if that wall had held, this knowledge would still be sealed in the dark today. The man who broke through that wall was Gaston Maspero, a French Egyptologist working with limited funding in the winter of 1881. And he wasn't even the one who found the pyramid first. Earlier explorers had dismissed it as unremarkable rubble, assuming, like everyone had for centuries, that pyramid interiors held nothing but bare stone, until his team finally cleared the debris blocking the chamber. When lamplight hit those walls, they realized within minutes that no one alive had seen anything like it. Rows of hieroglyphs, precisely carved, covering nearly every surface of the room. It would take decades of further work before scholars translated enough of the text to understand what the 200 spells actually described in full. And historians still debate why Unas alone needed this protection. Something had changed badly enough that a king broke a century-old tradition and had his tomb lined with what amounts to emergency instructions, carved permanently into stone. After Unas, the pyramid texts didn't disappear.
They kept appearing in the tombs of the kings who came after him, expanding with each generation. And centuries later, wealthy Egyptians began adapting these same spells for their own coffins. Historians call this later version the coffin texts.
By the New Kingdom, over 1,000 years after Unas died, these ideas had evolved further still into the Book of the Dead, the version most people today have actually heard of.
Every single one of them traces back to this one sealed chamber. The first time in Egyptian history that anyone dared to write down in permanent stone exactly what happens after the last breath.
Next, the sword steel so pure, Europe couldn't reproduce it for 800 more years. Subscribe so you don't miss it.